Fritz Hoffmann je američki fotograf, jedan od najboljih fotografa današnjice. Fotografijom je počeo da se bavi putujući po severozapadnom Pacifiku. Svojom profesionalnu karijeru započeo je na projektima u El Salvadoru i Srednjem Istoku. U novinarstvu je naučio radeći u redakcijama novina u Seattlu, Charlestonu i Knoxville. Po svom radu veliki doprinos dao je časopisu National Geographic, za koji je fotografisao događaje u Kini, Kambodži i Grenlandu. Bio je stalni akreditovani reporter u Šangaju u periodu od 1995. do 2008. godine. Iako više ne živi u Kini, Kina i kineska dijaspora ga neiscrpno inspirišu. Prije nego što pozovem gospodina Fritza da mi se pridruži, sa nama je glavni urednik National Geographic SERBIA, Igor Rio, koji želi da vam kaže par reči.
Dragi prijatelji, dobar dan. Zaista mi je veliko zadovoljstvo da smo na bilo koji način mogli da pomognemo kao časopis organizaciju i promociju jednog ovakvog festivala kao što je Fotorama. Radim se da je ovo tek početak jednog mnogo šireg fotografskog festivala, da kažem, koji bi se proširio, nadamo se, na celu zemlju. Zahvaljujući vama, vašoj strasti za saznavanjem, strasti ka fotografiji, siguran sam da će to biti moguće vrlo brzo. Par reči samo pre nego što gospodin Hoffmann uzme mikrofon. Ono što želim da kažem je da National Geographic jeste sinonim za neuporedivu fotografsku izuzetnost, a to ćete vidjeti ispred dana gospodina Hoffmanna. Molim vas da jednim aplauzom još jednom poželimo dobrodošlicu u Srbiju. Mr. Hoffmann, welcome to Serbia.
How's that, Mac? Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you for bringing me to Serbia. I have especially to thank Marko Stamatovic for being very passionate about this photo festival. You know, how do I become a National Geographic photographer? And so I want to just get that out right away here. Let's get that settled. First thing is you have to just go out and be a photographer. You have to be passionate about something and really pursue it until it becomes your thing. And the second thing is you have to subscribe to the magazine. I'm just amazed. A lot of times I meet people, young people in America or someplace, they say, how do I be a National Geographic photographer? And they don't subscribe to the magazine. So I'm very happy to hear that there is a Serbian language edition of National Geographic here. I think that's really great. And I applaud the staff for putting that together. I hope you will get a chance to take a look at it. There are some free copies out front, actually, too. So lately, in any photographer's life, you go along, you're working, you have to have a set of goals that you can pursue and check back on those goals from time to time, make sure you're on the right path. So I've been wondering lately, when was the first moment that I became a photographer? And I think about this sketch that I made when I was 14. I was planning to be an illustrator of this type, and I was a bad student because I always did doodling and sketching in class. And I was sketching this image here from a magazine photograph, this one. Just a picture that I found in a magazine, and it turned out this picture really got me, and this was photographed by Eugene Smith of Albert Schweitzer, and it was just the way that the image was presented, the perspective, all the choices that the photographer made to present this mood, and even the way the photograph was printed. And it was, and as you can see, this is a very famous photograph of Gene Smith. If you are looking into the history of photography, you'll find this photograph. So this was kind of the moment for me when I said, I was moved by photography and then want to go forward with photography. And this is a picture of me, a self-portrait I took in about, 1975. So That's a little while ago, but I'd like to see this. I found this recently. It's on film, and I would suggest the pictures, digital pictures that you're taking today. Would you be able to find them 30 years later? Something to think about. But I like this picture because I see that look in my eye. You know, that idea that there's some big adventure ahead and the excitement about it. And this is one of the first photographs that I made. It's of a classmate, and you know, just experimenting. I didn't know what I was doing, but experimenting. And unfortunately, you probably can't read this, but I went on and photographed a bit, and mostly just traveling and wandering. And this was like in about 1984. I said to myself, I'm ready to apply to National Geographic. And so this is, I applied to the National Geographic, sent my letter in, and this is a rejection letter I got from National Geographic. And very short, you know, couple sentences said, I'm sorry, you didn't make it. So that was January 1986, and I think that the most important thing that a photographer has to have is a commitment and a passion. So I didn't, you know, no rejection letter is going to stop me. I mean, that wasn't the end, and it wasn't. You know, and National Geographic wasn't the beginning either. So it was just part of the process. And so I found a way. I went to El Salvador on my own. I was able to make a connection there with a church, a local church where I grew up. And you know, you have to kind of take on your own projects and self-fund them. It's important that you have the commitment to do that, because it'll be a long time before you get some return, some payback. So I went to El Salvador, and it was really my first experience with a project, and really pursuing a project that was self-funded. This was in the mountains where the war was going on. But I didn't go to photograph war or anything like that. I just went because I had an opportunity to go. And when I realized that these photographs, this project made me realize that what I was interested in was the social condition and social documentary. And I worked in newspapers. I went back and after El Salvador and got a job at a newspaper. I didn't have any college degree, and I still don't, but I was able to start, you know, doing some small assignments for newspapers. And I did that for a few years, but I continued to do my personal work. This was a project I did on the mentally ill in the United States. And always I had some personal project. And I was living in the southern part of America, and I happened to meet somebody that was in the Ku Klux Klan, and they said, well, why don't you photograph my family? So I said, okay. So I photographed them for about 2 years. And I was trying to get into magazine work then, and and I had left newspapers. I had an agency in New York that I worked with, JD Pictures. And my big break in magazines came one weekend when the Mississippi River flooded over, and I went there on my own. And Monday morning, when the editors came into their office, they wanted pictures from that. So I was there, and that's part of the whole opportunity. You got to create your own opportunities, but you have to have a little bit of foresight to be in the right place. But this was also, so I was working on this for about 6 weeks. Every day I had a different magazine that was assigning me or using my pictures. And whereas in the past projects where I was working close in a social documentary way, this project actually was a very changing, made a very big change in my work, because I started to include the landscape more and think about the landscape. Because it was all about the landscape, this project. And so, and you know, when you're out there every day hunting for new pictures, you have to, you really have to pay attention and observe. And so that launched me, and from there, the news magazines were keeping me very busy. The Time magazine and Newsweek and U.S. News, three of the United States news weeklies kept me busy constantly. So this was something I photographed, the prison chain gangs for Time magazine. And this point, I started to ask myself, checking my goals and say, where am I going? How is this photography, doing these assignments, contributing to my overall experience in photography? And I was in a conversation with my agent in New York, and I said, I want to go abroad, I want to move abroad. And just then, President Clinton came on the TV in her office and was talking about China. And she said, oh, go to China, that'll be a story you can cover for a long time. People ask me why I went to China, which seems a little bit absurd, because look what China is happening, what's going on there, and how important it is in the world today. Just to give you an idea, this is China, this is Shanghai when I moved there in 1995. Shanghai, the new development area. This is the same place in 2007. So you can see they built all of this in a matter of 10 years. And that city has 20 million people, but there were no full-time photographers living there. And I've always wanted to be a photographer in the industrial period, and moving to China gave me that opportunity. So here I am up on top of the 88th floor of the skyscraper being constructed in Shanghai. And I had an assignment from a magazine. They said, can you get a picture of some migrant workers?
Imao sam zadatak od novina da mogu da slikam neke rudare.
And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to go up on this skyscraper. And so I just walked up to the construction gate and talked to the manager in Chinese and said, I want to go up on this building. He didn't say a thing. He handed me a hard hat and a safety badge and just said, be careful. And that's how easy it was, in China to get access like that back then. And I want to just say that when you're pursuing your pictures, don't photograph for anybody but yourself. I mean, even in magazines, they want that part of me in my pictures. That's why they hire me. And if you think that getting something published in a magazine is going to be the real reward, then you are fooling yourself. You're missing the real beauty of photography. If you think that you're getting like I was taking this picture for a magazine, and then I expect to see the picture in the magazine. But this is the way they used it. They cut out the whole background, they changed the picture totally. And what a great opportunity and a great picture. But you can see, I can't be disappointed by that, because the moment is the moment of being out in the... So, this building, here's where I took that picture, right about here. And then 10 years later, I got up on this building, and it took me a year to get access. I had to go through the public relations department and everybody, and some people call that progress. And I was really, became a part of the propaganda machine from China, because being the only photographer and taking a lot of pictures, sending them to the Western media, it was really supporting their idea about their future. They had this big idea about what China's future was, and they were constructing it. And it's a challenge to photograph this. This is Shanghai. These are 3 different buildings in Shanghai. And the challenge is to always come up with a new angle, something that nobody else has. So this is, go ahead. And I shot this picture for a National Geographic story on Shanghai. And I wanted to get this image because if you do a Google search on that, you can see everybody's taking pictures of those buildings now, and everybody's part of that propaganda machine. So that's the real key for everybody to find your own way and and don't follow what everybody else is doing. So in China, most of the stories I did all followed a similar pattern.
U Kini sve priče koje sam radila imali su sličnu šemu.
And it was all about the Western idea about China.
I sve je bilo vezano za ideju Zapada o Kini.
And it was very frustrating because I was on the ground and wanting to show what I thought was, the story of China. And it's very hard sometimes when you're making a phone call to an editor in New York or London to convince them about certain pictures. So for about 10 years in China, the first 10 years, I photographed around the country and, every day working on different either assignments for publications or my own pictures, my own stories. And it's pretty difficult for a white person in China to not be noticed. But what I do usually, if I want to make a picture, I don't necessarily do street photography. I think about the kind of picture that I might find somewhere, like this picture here in a cooking school. And I was thinking, how can I illustrate the growing middle class and disposable income? And I noticed there's a lot more restaurants in China, so there must be some place educating the new chefs and kitchen staff. And other pictures I just kind of stumbled on. This was in Western China, and I came there for this landscape, but found these tourist hotels. And again, the whole idea of the landscape in the picture for China, because China is very big, and the story about China is very big. I started trying to make my compositions a bit more complex and contain a lot of information. This is a place where the people are living in caves. You can see the cave dwellings in the back on the hillside there. And this is inside a school that's in a cave.
Ovo je škola koja se nalazi u jednoj od tih pećina.
A lot of times, my approach is see if I'm down on the ground there photographing this traffic jam of coal trucks. I want to get something, that gives it some perspective. So I'm always trying to move around the scene and think about how it might look from different angles, backlight or other types of light. And when I first went to China, the first thing I did while I was waiting for my work visa, I studied Mandarin for a year and a half, 6 hours a day. And at the time, I thought, this is a waste of time. I got to be out there traveling in China and seeing it. I might have to go back to the States tomorrow. I don't know how long I can stay here. But later on, I realized that the investment in the time to learn the language was very practical. To be able to walk up to somebody and know that there's a picture, but to get close to somebody and talk to them, have a conversation with them, because that's oftentimes when what you need to make a good picture is a little bit of time to wait and for people to get comfortable. This is in a plastic Christmas tree factory. And it was funny because I was on a forklift up several meters up, and this is at shift change when everybody's going, and I was on the forklift, and I wanted everybody to look at me, but of course everybody's talking to themselves, and so I started screaming in Chinese, telling some jokes, and people started paying attention. So just the language has been very, it's just really helped my photography in China. And oftentimes what I'm looking for when I'm photographing are things that might actually happen. I saw this with a chair there, but there was no person. And I just waited, and knowing that somebody would come sit in this this man who plays an emperor in an opera, came and sat down there in the sunlight. This was in the Gobi Desert. Another pretty amazing trip in China. Hainan, which is like Chinese Hawaii.
Hainan, to su kao kineski Havaji.
And Qinghai Lake.
Qinghai jezero.
Beautiful place.
Divno mesto.
And so what I often do, even if I'm doing street photography, like I saw this young couple, but I'm really close to them, and I have to talk to them for a little bit, and then they get relaxed, and they say, well, I'm going to take your picture, so just forget about me, and it takes them a while to do that, but the picture that I want is something that cannot be taken with a telephoto lens. It's the Tibetan Horse Festival. There's just a lot of different ways to look at things, and I don't always like to rely on formula, but I do like to get things in the foreground, get more elements, especially for National Geographic. They like, I think what works very successfully about images with a lot of layers. So after I had been, let's see, this is, like this picture here, we were coming down the road, and I saw this little white horse in the middle of the road. And it was quite a ways in the distance, but I knew there was a picture there. I just wanted this picture of the horse. But I walked up slowly, got out of the car, walked slowly, and the horse moved and the scene changed. I thought, oh, I missed it. But, you keep working, and I got this nice moment with the people in it. The horse is still in there, but it wasn't what my original composition was. I would do a project, a story for them called Manchuria Mandate, and it's on the Manchuria section. So at that time I had something to bring to them, something that they needed. I could speak Chinese, and I'd been everywhere in China, and they had this China story. And although I had maintained some contacts in National Geographic up until then with some editors that I knew, it was very nice that they came to me for this story rather than me going to them again with my portfolio and getting, a rejection. It was very nice, to get this confirmation from my first assignment. So the story was in the Northeast. It's up near Russian Siberia, very cold in the winter, and it's the place where China under Chairman Mao, tried to industrialize. And when we do a story in National Geographic, we have a story development team, and that includes the photographer and the picture editor and the writer and the writing editor, map, somebody who's doing a map, layout, somebody who's going to do the layout. There's about 10 different people, and in the beginning we will start to talk about what the story is and what our ideas might be. But it comes down to, once you get past that, it comes down to just being out there, making the pictures. And they depend a lot on the photographer to make a lot of the decisions in the field, really. You are the editor in the field. I'm out there making the decisions. Where am I going to go? What do I want to photograph? We have one idea, which is to get something that represents coal, for example. But how I photograph that is up to me. And I was driving along in the middle of winter in this part of China, and I saw this hill, which looks very man-made. And you can see, and I look closer, you can see up here some little people. And that's when I got excited, thinking, I'm going to go up there. I knew that's where the picture was. And, but I was all bundled up, and it was about -25. I was all bundled up, climbing up there. And when I got up to the top, the people turned and looked at me, and I was speaking Chinese with them, and they were not expecting to have a foreigner climb up this hill, in the middle of nowhere. And this is a really classic, I'd say an example of a successful landscape photograph for National Geographic. You can see the background gives you a sense of place and where we are. And you have a dramatic light.
Imate to dramatično.
And something going on in the picture that's very dramatic as well. These people and how they live. And even this angle, this very straight angle here, what we call the angle of repose, it indicates a manufactured landscape. And this is the kind of picture, and I'm sorry the projection of it isn't so good, but this is the kind of thing that I love. When you get an image that has a little bit of some magic, and the magic here being that these two guys, almost like a mirror image of each other. And by the way, this is all film that I'm showing you, transparency film. I didn't start shooting digital until just a couple years ago. And so that was good practice, learning how to expose in situations like this for transparency. So in these stories, we're trying to think of a narrative. What is the story I'm telling, and which pictures can support that, and is the story that I want to tell accurate? Of course, I want to make some interesting pictures, and fun pictures, like these Brazilian dancers on a stage in China. But, go ahead.
Želim da napravim dobru sliku, ali mogu da budu i...
But I have to think about the story, and this story was about development and economic development and reform, going from a planned economy to a market economy.
I ove slike govore o...
But that's also kind of a recurring theme when you talk about China, so I'm always trying to kind of go in a little bit deeper. And here's the situation. This is in the Tianxi Industrial District, which was the center of China's industrial development under Chairman Mao. Yeah, so these model workers got preferred housing, and then now today they're like the homeless people. How the model village is being demolished, and they're holding out there trying to get some compensation from the government. So you can imagine, for a foreigner to show up in a place like this, where there's some tension and a lot of suspicion by the local people, and talk my way into some home and make a picture like this. It takes a lot of negotiation. And that negotiation is like a one-on-one that I have with my subject. It's the relationship that I build with them. Same thing here. This was a Communist Party policeman who was very wealthy. Somehow a policeman gets wealthy, and getting into his home to make a picture like this.
Ovo je bio policajac komunističke partije koji je bio veoma bogat.
And that's the kind of thing that National Geographic hired me for. That I can not just take pictures on the street, but I could go inside. I can think beyond the streets. And making some graphic images that will catch the reader's attention, but also give some information about the story. I mean, this is obvious, the way the girl's hair is cut, her bleached hair, and that big advertisement, and it's for an American car that's made in China. And I do, that's not to say that I don't do street photography. I mean, usually when I'm working on a story, I get up at, the break of dawn and go out and see what I can do. If I don't have anything scheduled, I'm going to be out there photographing. And I was out one morning really early, and I stumbled onto this wedding party, and there were a lot of photographers there that were hired by the couple or friends of the family. Of course, their picture was just of the couple, But I came around to the side, so the photographers are on my right, and I came around to the left because I wanted to get those oil donkeys in there and set that landscape up. And fortunately, it was early morning, so the sun is at a low angle and coming into the car. So people often think, oh, well, you can only work in the late day or the early morning because that's when the light is the warmest. But it's also, the light is shining at a different angle. So it's going to shine into things differently. This is another example of that. This is early in the morning, 6 a.m. And look how nicely the light is shining into the bus of these workers. If I only work in the daylight hours, when it's 12 noon or something, then it's going to be very different light. And I think this is a picture that is an example, a very obvious difference between film and, I would say, transparency film especially, and digital. Mostly because with digital, you have a lot of information in the black area, and you would have maybe too much information. You lose that drama. With transparency, this is just black. There's nothing there. I think that's the most frustrating thing right now. If I send this picture to National Geographic, they would say, well, let's try to open this up. Let's see what's in there. And then I have to always fight and say, I don't want to see what's in there. I want this kind of drama. I'm always looking for some sort of point and counterpoint. You have Mao with his hand raised and this man with his hand forward. And I want to say, take a second here just to teach you a little bit of Chinese. This is Baijiu and Pijiu. And this is Pijiu, which means beer. And, 90% of what you do, or what I do, is depends on getting access to something. And sometimes we have to toast a little bit of beer with some people, make some new friends. And this is Baijiu. We say Baijiu is like a vodka or something like that. And this is the vice governor of the province of Liaoning, where I was trying to get access. So I knew it was at the end of the story, and I needed to get inside a big state factory. So I knew there was only one way, and that would be to, I was able to get contact with this guy, the governor, vice governor, and he says, well, you have to come have dinner with me, and so the way it works is there's one of you and 10 of them. And every time they tote one, you take one shot and they take one. So everybody wants to toast you. So I had 10 shots and they all had one shot. And the thing is, you're thinking, how am I going to take pictures tomorrow? I'm going to be so wiped out. And in fact, they had to carry me onto the train 8 o'clock, and I was vomiting on the train floor, and rode all night long. And in the morning, the train arrived at the border of North Korea, and there was a car waiting, and they took me to the steel mill. And they got to open the door, it was like minus 30. And they said, okay, take your pictures. So I was hungover, and it was really cold. And this was my opportunity to get this picture for the magazine. So, this was probably the hardest day I've ever had as a photographer, trying to keep my head focused, and the film was breaking off in my camera. It was so cold. But it was also probably one of the best days I've ever had making pictures, and I just love being inside these big, hulking factories. So this next story that I want to show you is Searching for Shangri-La. And this was published a couple of years ago. And this takes place in a small area near the border of Tibet. And the opening spread here you see is a Tibetan pilgrim coming over this high-altitude pass. So the thing about this region, you can see this is Burma over here, and Tibet up there, and you can see this is very close to the southwest China. But the thing is that there are 3 major rivers coming through here, all going to important parts of Asia.
Čekavike rijeke koji odlaze u delove Azije.
And those three rivers pass within a 50-mile piece of land. So you had a river and a mountain range, a river, a mountain range, a river, and a mountain range. And that made it really difficult to cover. But the story was about the rivers. And the rivers were at, let's say, 1,000 meters, and everybody lived at 3,000 meters elevation. And, so this presented a lot of problems, I didn't know what was up there. And I had to talk to a lot of people and photograph what I could on the rivers. I had to represent the rivers in there somehow. And so this is how they get across from one side of the river to the other. And this guy was bringing his cow to the market.
Na pijacu.
This is a classic example of being there. Because the picture isn't really that great, compositionally or anything else. It's not that fantastic. But the moment and what's going on here is what it's all about. And I had been here for a couple hours, photographing people come across, waiting for something interesting, and we were about ready to stop and move on. And way up on the mountain there in the background, I was looking through some binoculars, and I could see some people coming with some animals. And we waited, and I kept watching them kind of go on the trail, trying to see which trail they would choose if they were coming, in fact, to this place. And when they finally came down and were getting close, I was just too excited to really even hold the camera steady. And that's why I said, you've got to be there and make sure that technically everything is right and you get the picture. So I had two cameras, and one of them had a medium, like a telephoto, let's say. It was, and the other one was a wide angle. And I had shot this guy coming across, and then when he came across first, and they pushed the cow, and then he went back out to get him. So I had shot it with the telephoto, but I just don't like that look so much. And I came around, and fortunately, in enough time I was able to get down in position for this. We're always looking for some way, it's all about water, and always looking for some way to put water in the story. And this was the bathing festival. And in this region, there are 15 different ethnic minority groups. And this is the Lisu minority. At the bathing festival they have, at the end of the winter, they come down from the mountains and bathe in the hot springs. And the question that everybody asks when they see this picture is, how did you get this picture? You're a man. And I was actually quite surprised myself. They didn't splash me or anything.
Bio sam I sam iznenađen, nisu me poprskali.
But I had a translator with me because these people speak Lisu dialect, and I don't understand that. And they were talking to him, and later he told me what some of the things they were saying, and I can't repeat it. But they were saying things about me. But it was all in good fun, and we made friends, and it was because of them that I was able to find out what's going on up in the mountains. They come down, and it was my opportunity to interview people and say, what's going on in your village? What's going on out there? And that's really important. What you see in front of you isn't always the picture. It might be an opportunity to find a better picture, and go inside. These are, yesterday I was asking Marco about the monasteries nearby. And because I said it, I guess, with a little bit of, curiosity. But these guys are some Tibetan lamas from a monastery. Here they are with their cell phones and shooting pool, and that's a kind of, I won't say it's a cliche because it's lamas, outside their monastery doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So I wouldn't say it's a cliche for this kind of story about the conflict of development, but it works pretty well for us in this way. Does it accurately represent the situation? I think it did. Here's a Tibetan with a leopard skin. I mean, it's just a very, very colorful place, really wonderful place. If you're ever going to go to China, I think that's a good area to go to. And this was something that I was really fortunate to find, and part of it is just paying attention to your surroundings. Can anybody guess what's going on here? I mean, this is a small village in the mountains, and each one of these logs is channeling the water into a drum and into a generator. So it's water-powered electricity, and each one of those represents one light bulb in somebody's home. So in a story, I'll be trying to talk about the value of water. China wants to dam these rivers to create electricity, hydropower for the whole country. And here we are with a perfect picture to kind of illustrate the importance of that, just for the local people.
I ova slika ilustruje primer toga bar za lokalne stanovnike.
This was a wedding up in the mountains, and this is one of these two things, these two pictures that I showed you, the last two, this one and the previous one, were made because I met people at the water festival, the bathing festival, and they invited me to their village. And this is a situation too, when we talk about light, you know, this is probably at about 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the light's really bad outside. But you can get inside and you can see, you can find nice light sometimes. And this was a Tibetan, some pilgrims that when I was going up to that, it was, let's see, it's 6,000 meters elevation. And trying to keep up with these Tibetan pilgrims, we had sleeping bags and put them out at night, and I'd hear them in the middle of the night going by in the darkness with their prayer wheels. And just trying to keep up with them and then make a picture. And I was shooting film in the forest and trying to stay up, and then when they'd stop, I had to catch up and then try to hold the camera steady to make a picture. It was really athletic achievement for me. So I'm always looking for things like this situation here with this guy and this mill for pounding corn. You know, he was there doing that himself. But then his boy came along and laid on him like that, and then he took a drag from his cigarette even. So, and you can see I got the mountains in the background there, so it gives us a good sense of place. This was a kind of a tough situation because we hiked up, we were looking for the most primitive village possible. And we hiked up to about 3,000 meters and found this village. And okay, you show up, and it's a village, and there's nobody, and what do? And so we stopped and just listened. And we heard this, in the distance, we heard a lot of noise in this one village home, and we went to that home. And and went inside, and there was this big celebration going on. And that's the thing, you know, I'm a stranger coming into someone's home, but then I have to make the transition from that to making photographs in there, you know, getting permission and letting them be comfortable and carry on. This was a Nashi festival, and they kill a pig for the New Year, and every family in the village gets equal portions of the meat, part of the ceremony. And sometimes, you know, just photographing, you know, you don't have to be too creative. You don't have to try too hard. You just have to make the composition nice and find a camera angle that works. So I want to talk, this is the last little section here. You might be getting a little bit retired, but hang in there. This is, I want to talk a little bit about how I find a story. And, I mean, how do you find a story for National Geographic? I mean, it's more like, how do you find something that interests you? And I think a photographer has to photograph what they know best, or what they are most interested in. And this recently, I guess it didn't run in the Serbian edition, but in our March edition of National Geographic, we had a story. You can't read it, but it's called Pet Rocks. So you can see it's very different than the other pictures I showed you. And I'll show you how I came onto this. I'm living in the USA now. My wife is a photographer, and she's been getting her master's degree for the last 2 years. And this house was where my grandparents lived, and my father grew up. It was built in 1720. And I inherited this house in 2006. And this is what the house looked like in 2006. My uncle was the last person living there, and he was a hoarder. He collected. So the house outside was full, and the inside was full. You couldn't go in the house anymore. It was that full of things. But like I say, it was built in 1720. I mean, the first Europeans went to America in 1620. And so I had to hang on to it. And we dug everything out of the house, and we found a lot of old things in there from some of the early residents. And these were some tintype photographs from the 1800s. Because the people my grandparents bought the house from when they moved there in 1940, one descendant of the original owners was living there. And he was alone, and they let him continue living there. So when he died, he left his things there. So it was really remarkable to find these tintypes of the original people who built this house in 1720. Well, descendants of them. I mean, these pictures, these tintypes were from the 1800s, and then the photography hadn't been invented in 1720. But we also found these glass plates. And looking at these, I started to look at the landscape. And this is the landscape before, when the Europeans came, they cleared all the land and they started farming. Today it's all grown up because there's no farming there. But you see this rock right here. And we had a property dispute. Some neighbor tried to take some of the property. And fortunately, we also found all the original deeds in the house from 1746 on. So in the land deeds, it would say from this rock, 400 meters to that rock, because that was 1746 and 1855, and all these old deeds, they had these rocks as landmarks. And so I started to look at the rocks and investigate them. And I realized that I started to learn about these rocks in that part of the country, and they were brought there by the ice sheets. And it's kind of hard to see in here, but there's a line here that goes around. And when the ice came down from the north, it carried this debris. And when the ice melted, it left the debris there. So these are called glacial erratics. And that was about 18,000 years ago, the ice melted. I'm not a scientist, I can't bring that to National Geographic. I don't know anything about science or geography, really. Remember, I flunked in school and didn't go to college. But I know something about photography. And this rock is called Plymouth Rock. And the story says that history says that the first Europeans came to America and they stepped off their boat onto this rock. And that's why it has the date 1620. And it's this moment in American history that is really, everybody knows about it. Thanksgiving Day is because of the first Thanksgiving when the Puritans came and landed. Here's a drawing about them landing on this rock, which is a glacial erratic. So I was proposing, I had this idea that I wanted to photograph these rocks. Not just any rock, but a glacial erratic, one moved by the glaciers. But I had to make it somehow more interesting, so I focused on the ones that we somehow have made a part of our culture and our history. So this is Table Rock. All the rocks have names and some kind of significance in history. This was the indigenous people in America use this as a sacred rock. And this is Jaeger Rock. So you can imagine the ice sheet came down here. This is at the end where the ice ended, and it was 2,000 feet thick, the ice. So those big rocks are just pebbles in that scale. And here you can see that the glaciers moved across here, smoothing the landscape and leaving behind these boulders. I mean, National Geographic likes to, some of the most popular stories that run in the magazine they have to do with natural history and wildlife, the environment, science, things like that. I think a really successful story in National Geographic can kind of bridge a couple different themes. So this is about geography or geology and science, but it's also about society. I wanted to show, this is cropped a little bit because of the projection, but I wanted to show how these rocks, how we live with the Ice Age, examples of the Ice Age all around us. And that way make us think differently about our surroundings and our place on the planet. This one is called Tripod Rock. You can see there's three different rocks there supporting it. And you see this here, you can barely make it out, but there are 3 rocks supporting these. And they think that the Lenape Indians propped these ones up to mimic that. But I also wanted to show, when I'm working on a story, I get some kind of concepts in my mind that kind of guide me a little bit, and things I try to put in the picture and communicate. And one of the things that with this I wanted to try to show time, and how we are busy moving at a certain speed of time, but the rocks and the earth is moving.